Strikes by two U.S. F-16 fighter jets on weapons and ammunition facilities in Syria on Friday are fueling fears that the Israel-Hamas conflict may spread in the Middle East. President Joe Biden ordered the mission in retaliation for attacks on U.S. forces by Iranian-backed militia. The Pentagon said the two facilities targeted near Abu Kamal, a Syrian town on the border with Iraq, were used by Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps and militia groups. U.S. and coalition troops have been attacked at least 19 times in Iraq and in Syria by Iran-backed forces in the past week.
Let me say this before this council.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken told the United Nations on Tuesday that Washington would act swiftly if the attacks by Iran's proxies continued.
The United States does not seek conflict with Iran. We do not want this war to widen. But if Iran or its proxies attack U.S. personnel anywhere, make no mistake, we will defend our people, we will defend our security, swiftly and decisively.
Hamas, Islamic Jihad, and Lebanon's Hezbollah are all backed by Tehran. Biden sent a rare message to Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, warning against targeting U.S. personnel in the Middle East, the White House said on Thursday. Iran's foreign minister Hussein Amir Abdullahian followed up with this warning at the United Nations.
I say frankly to the American statesmen who are now managing the genocide in Palestine that we do not welcome to expansion of the war in the region. But I warn, if the genocide in Gaza continues, they will not be spared from this fire.
The United States has already sent warships and fighter aircraft to the region over the last 3 weeks. And on Thursday at the Pentagon, Brigadier General Patrick Ryder confirmed about 900 more U.S. troops are due there.
While I won't talk specific deployment locations for these forces, I can confirm that they are not going to Israel, and that again, they are intended to support regional deterrence efforts and further bolster U.S. force protection capabilities.
I think the interesting thing with how the Biden administration is framing it is they're calling out the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps from go, rather than sort of using a euphemism, proxy groups or something along those lines. They're going straight for the big kahuna right away. I think that's meant to signal, as well as the size, right? In previous instances, they were smaller amounts of airstrikes, and this time I think the number they put it at was 30. That's a little larger than normal. And then if you read the statement a little bit farther, they're signaling that this could go basically for everybody to butt out. The idea is that, the Iranians themselves from the beginning, they've been talking a lot, but they've been playing by, they're not nice rules. We're not exactly playing dodgeball out here, but, they're playing by the rules of the escalation ladder that have been in place with the Israelis since 2006, and it appears with the Americans that have been in place basically since the 2010s. The concern is with horizontal escalation, i.e. that in response to the Israeli incursions, the airstrikes that are taking place, the Iranians have been telling everybody overtly and loudly that they will proliferate, they will escalate if necessary. And again, going back to those rules, one of the ways that you can escalate without necessarily risking getting your teeth kicked in, if you're the Iranian leadership, is by doing they're harassment attacks, small indirect fire, but for the troops at the other end, they still are not pleasant. The reason why I give credence to the fact that the Iranians may have been caught off guard is the very same reason that we didn't see the types of indirect fire attacks that we're seeing now. They had de-escalated the situation in line with the widely reported discussions with the Biden administration around the prisoner swap. And I think the sort of handshake agreement between the two sides is, let's try and keep things at the status quo. Let's release hostages. And in exchange, the United States is essentially paying Iran with its own money for behavior that it likes. Obviously, fast forward after 10/7, and things have sort of gone sideways. I think the intention, particularly with the airstrikes, with the way that the Biden administration is signaling will stop if you stop, is that everybody wants to keep this from going sideways and would like to basically try and keep this contained to Gaza itself rather than a broader regional conflict. If I had to guess, right, is that both sides, the Israelis and the Iranians, don't actually want to break the rules. Why? Because the Israelis are going to need that manpower down in the south for when they invade Gaza. Whatever you think of the invasion, the Israelis keep telling us they're going to invade, so I just tend to believe leaders when they say things. And there's 360,000 reservists. They're going to need a lot of them down south, and I don't think they want a two-front war. And the Iranians, they like to do the hold me back, hold me back, hold me back, but how would they possibly be able to escalate without risking sort of severe and significant destruction of their infrastructure in southern Lebanon out to Syria? And so the rules, again, these are not nice rules, appear to be holding. But of course, leaders make dumb decisions all the time. And so tomorrow they could wake up and feel like they have to go big, the Iranians or the Israelis, and then you risk these sort of unintended escalation or intended escalation that locks the two sides into a much larger conflict that perhaps neither wants but may want tomorrow. That's been in civil war, remains at civil war. Its government, while sort of locked in place and externally guaranteed by the Iranians and the Russians, can't under any circumstances basically retake all of the entirety of its country. It's too weak. It's an economically calamitous position. But of course, sometimes you have to do the hold me back routine a little bit as well. And so they may try and bandwagon or hide behind somebody and say, I'll try and punch you in the nose so long as you just sort of play by the rules. And so my guess is that they want to stay as far away from this as possible while doing the bare minimum to sort of fly the flag of the axis of resistance.
Central Command and the military are still evaluating the impact of those strikes. But I would just remind you that the purpose for those two sites that we targeted was to have a significant impact on future IRGC and Iran-backed militia group operations. It went right at storage facilities and ammo depots that we know were being used to support the work of these militia groups, and particularly in Syria. And the main goal is to disrupt that ability, also to deter and to prevent future attacks. We're not interested, as Secretary Austin said in his statement last night, in escalating this. Nobody's looking for a conflict with Iran. And I want to also be clear that this was, as the Secretary said, completely separate and distinct from what's going on between Israel and Hamas. The President has been crystal clear that he's going to act to protect U.S. personnel on the ground, and we continue to reserve the right to respond to any attacks at a time and a place of our choosing. We will not hesitate to take further actions in our own self-defense. During today's meeting, the President emphasized that both the United States and China need to manage competition in the relationship responsibly and maintain open lines of communication. He underscored that the United States and China must work together to address global challenges. In his view, this was a positive development and a good opportunity to keep the conversation going. Both sides have regularly acknowledged the importance of leader-level channels of communication to manage this most consequential of bilateral relationships. And as you know, the President has stated multiple times that he hopes to see President Xi in the near future. And then on your second question, just writ large across the scope of these meetings, we have absolutely raised our concerns about the unsafe intercept in the South China Sea. On the hostage situation, today the Vice President and the second gentleman had a chance to meet with families of Americans that are still unaccounted for following October 7th terrorist attacks. During that meeting, the Vice President and the second gentleman listened to the family's experience over the past several weeks, which has been, of course, been agonizing, and expressed their deep support. The Vice President conveyed to the families that there's no higher priority for her and the President than the safety of American citizens overseas, emphasizing that we're doing everything we can possible to bring them home and to secure their release. She also spoke to how we are working with partners in the Middle East to ensure that any country with influence over Hamas brings that influence to bear to help secure their release. This obviously remains at the forefront of all our diplomatic conversations, and it will remain at the forefront until we're able to bring these Americans back home with their families where they belong. Our efforts to support humanitarian assistance continue. There's 10 additional trucks got in today. That brings the total to 84, which obviously we're glad that 10 more trucks got in, but it's not at all going to meet the need, and we're continuing to press our partners for much more. We also understand that the UN would be able to access some fuel starting today. Again, that's a good thing, but that fuel's only anticipated to last for the next couple of days. So again, clearly not enough. We got to make sure that more fuel gets in, and we are working it very, very hard again with our partners on the ground. And so, at the same time, we're still also trying to support efforts to get safe passage for civilians out of Gaza. I don't have an update on that, but again, we are working that very hard.